I know we're not going to talk about so much about the other races, but seeing other teams that in the last year had hard seasons. Bahrain, we saw them starting to come back and looking good this season. Ineos winning the time trial in UAE with Josh Charlin. So it's just a lot of course, we have the dominant Pogačar, but I like to look at the other side stories as well. And it's shaping up to be a really interesting season, in my opinion.
Everybody, welcome back to The Move. We are running down the UAE Tour, the Volta Algarve, the Ruta del Sol, Volta Andalusia, whatever they're calling it these days, this flurry of stage racing we had this past weekend. I'm Spencer Martin. I have Johan Bruyneel and George Hincapie here with me to break it all down. But first, let's talk about our sponsors for today's episode. The first one is Peak, and they have Peak Pour Teas. As cyclists, we know that energy, endurance, and digestion can make or break performance, but one of the big differentiators in modern cycling is gut issues. More specifically, the sluggish and bloated feeling that high-carb on-bike fueling can leave you with. That's why Peak's Pure Teas are such a game changer when it comes to cycling performance, and why their green tea has become a go-to pre-ride fuel here at We Do. It provides calm, steady energy without the jitters or crashes that coffee might provide. And after a tough session, their black teas help us recover faster, keeping our guts happy and bodies primed for the next ride. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, George can expand on this further in the episode, but one of the biggest deciders between who wins and who doesn't is who doesn't have an upset stomach when they're cramming down 200 carbs an hour in modern cycling. What is the Peak Pour Tea Bundle? It's a duo of fermented green and black teas designed to reset your guts, enhance your metabolism, and optimize your energy levels. It is ideal because it gives you sustained energies with no spikes, no crashes, just clean, long-lasting focus for endurance training, a gut reset, and metabolism support. Their teas come from wild-harvested 250-year-old tea trees, and they're toxin-screened for purity, crafted with cold extraction technology for maximum absorption. Plus, it dissolves instantly in hot or cold water. Perfect for cyclists on the go. I've been having their coffee replacement every morning. It's really easy. Just pop it in some hot or cold water, as they say, and you're good to go. And for a limited time, I thought this was a mistake. That's how good this offer is. For a limited time, you get 20% off for life. Plus a free starter kit, rechargeable frother and glass beaker included when you grab the Peak Pour bundle with our link, peaklife.com/themove. And with Peak's 90-day money-back guarantee, you've got nothing to lose. That is Peak Life. That's PIQUELIFE.com/themove, spelled out THEMOVE. That's peaklife.com/themove for 20% off for life. You have to grab that. You have to pause this episode and go get that. I could not believe they were offering that. I can't imagine it's going to go for long. The next sponsor is Maui Nui, the world's only source for Maui's exceptionally healthy wild harvested access deer meat. Maui Nui's line of 100% wild harvested red meat is an extremely healthy option that delivers the highest protein to calorie ratio available. 53% more than grass-fed beef. I was shocked to read that. Their sugar-free peppered stick packs offer 10 grams of protein at just 55 calories, are loaded with essential nutrients, vitamins, and healthy fats, and they're the perfect healthy snack to stay fueled between meals, pre or post-workout, or for me, on the go. When I'm traveling, I eat really unhealthily. So that's why I love Maui Nui's stick packs to get to my protein, which I probably don't get enough of, and keep me eating healthy when I'm at the airport, on the plane, in the car, etc. And one of the best parts about ordering Maui Nui Venison is that you're not only getting a healthy, delicious, ethical meal delivered right to your door, you're playing a key role in their mission to reclaim abundant food systems and preserve the delicate native ecosystems on Maui. As someone that used to live there, this product means a lot to me, since I know, how difficult it is to source food on the Hawaiian Islands. It's very hard to get almost everything you eat is imported, which seems ridiculous because you can grow or harvest almost anything you would need on the islands. And B, just how big of an issue the overpopulation of the axis deer have become. I almost never used to see them on my ride. It was really rare. I was back just recently visiting friends, and I saw a ton of axis deer. So it's fantastic that Maui Nui is helping to cull those populations. Maui Nui, if this sounds interesting to you, Maui Nui Venison is offering the Move listeners a limited collection of their favorite cuts and products, but Supply is limited by the nature of their work, so do not wait. Head to MauiNuiVenison.com/TheMove. That's a little hard to spell. That's MauiNuiVenison.com/TheMove. Maui, like the island, NuiVenison.com/TheMove to get that limited collection of cuts. All right, George and Johan, I'm sure you guys were up early, 4 a.m. this morning, just crunching tape from the three. We actually had 4 stage races, but we're just going to pick a few of the top moments from each one. But UAE Tour, let's start with that one because it's a World Tour race and had the world's best rider in it. Saturday, stage 6, Tim Merlier won. Really impressive sprint finish. Like, came from so far down, and they were probably going 55K an hour. He just stepped out, passed everybody, won the sprint. Stage 7 summit finish, Jebel Hafit, which is the famous summit finish at the UAE Tour. This one was the one I want to talk the most about because it breaks up early, like 145K to go. Pogačar makes the split. He made it. He probably wasn't going to miss it, but it shows you how he could lose that race. Like, if it happened, this is how it would happen. And then he keeps rolling through with a few teammates. Doesn't have enough, though, to pull in the climb. You knew exactly what was going to happen. The last one pulled off at 7K to go. He attacks, wins by 32 seconds over Julio Ciccone, 35 seconds over Pello Bilbao, wins the GC by 114 over Ciccone, biggest margin of victory at the UAE Tour of all time. Pello Bilbao, third at 119. Johan, George, this maybe didn't look like a lot if you just look at the results, but this is the second longest solo ride in the history of the UAE Tour, and it's the largest margin of victory in the GC ever. I mean, I think if you came away from this race with any conclusion that other than Pogačar picked up right where he left off in 2014, I don't know what to tell you.
George, I think it was like you said, Spencer, a dominant performance. I read somewhere where he did 490 watts for over 5 minutes on that one portion of that climb, which is outstanding. Just really dominant the whole way, had fun along the way, did some crazy attack 10K into one of the stages, which we never see, which probably angered a bunch of the guys in the peloton. But it's just cool. It's exciting to see, the high level racing back in the game and seeing other teams. I know we're not going to talk about so much about the other races, but seeing other teams that in the last year had hard seasons. Bahrain, we saw them starting to come back and looking good this season. Ineos winning the time trial in UAE with Just Charlin. So it's just a lot of course, we have the dominant Pogačar, but I like to look at the other side stories as well. And it's shaping up to be a really interesting season, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, we all knew that Pogačar was the favorite, so there's no surprise there. I mean, I don't know what you guys think, though. And we always have to, measure Pogačar based on the competition, right? So it's against Ciccone and Bilbao. They're really good riders, but they're not his main rivals in the Grand Tours. But I think he's already in really good shape. He did an amazing time trial, I think, flat 12 kilometers. Only lost, I think, 15 seconds or so to Josh Darling, which was a great performance. Then won the stage, the first uphill finish, which was not a very hard one, but he won that really dominantly. And then, I mean, once the two Belgians, the two new recruits of UAE, Florian Vermeersch and Rune Garregaards, the Belgians, pulled off on the last climb. It was probably about a little less than 8 kilometers to go. He already went. And we all know, that these kind of efforts, especially at the beginning of the season when it's your first race, you're a bit in the unknown, but it was clear that as soon as he went, he wins the stage with 33 seconds, but it could have been easily a minute because I think he paced himself quite smartly and he set up at the end also. So, great performance. There's one thing, though, I would like to ask your guys' opinion on. Something I noted. I think he's been doing all the stages except the time trial on the new Colnago aero bike, right? The much talked of new technology and reportedly the fastest bike in the world right now for road bikes, or at least that's what Colnago claims. I don't think he looks the same on this bike. It's a different position. What do you guys think? I mean, it's hard to judge because the frame is so unconventional that it's difficult to have a real idea. But he looks different to me on that bike. What do you think, George? Have you seen something?
I did see some comparison. I don't know where I saw, but like over the years of how slightly there was changes in his position. I did see that somewhere. I didn't really notice it on a personal level, but I mean, like you said, it doesn't seem to be affecting him negatively in any way. Like he just continues to dominate. And it's just, I feel like the differences between our era and this era is like, I don't remember Lance starting out the year was like having to win a race like that, where you're like, you go to your home country race and he's got to win. Like there's no option there. He's at the UAE Tour. I mean, he's got to show up firing on all pistons. But it's like, that's the new cycling. Like these guys are so good all year long and they can win. They pick the races they want to win. And clearly he's not at his best form, but he's still riding away from most of the best riders in the world. So I think, I remember back in our day, we'd start off with like Ruta del Sol or Algarve, and like maybe Lance would go for the time trial, maybe not, or maybe one mountain stage, but definitely not going for correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not going for the overall win, because we would perceive that as being in way too good of a shape, way too early on.
It would be a negative,
It would be, right? Yeah.
Good too early. That obviously changed. Also something that I really was surprised to see, and it's also now it's part of modern cycling. I'm still not convinced it's the best, but with Pogačar special, so he can do anything. But so he's done this race now, and he. Of course, he wants to win the Tour again, which is the main goal, I think. But he doesn't do any more stage races now until the Dauphiné.
Yeah, I saw that.
One-day races. I mean, it's like, what? I mean, it's like, okay, you kind of have to train your body for a multi-day event, including, the pre-race preparation, then the recovery during in between stages. That's all gone now also. I personally think, for a rider like Pogačar, the Tour of UAE, he did the time trial full gas, and he did this last climb, probably not full gas, but he probably wouldn't have gone any harder in training. But most of the other stages, a training camp would have been harder for him than sitting in punch, right?
Well, those crosswinds were huge wattage. He was doing like 600 watts for multiple minutes in those crosswinds. So that is not sitting in the bunch, really.
But I mean, who makes those decisions, Johan? Does he make those decisions? His trainer makes those decisions? I mean, going from his past seasons where he did the Giro and he did plenty of stage races beforehand, like this is almost unheard of, where you're going to do 2 stage races leading up to the Tour de France to defend your Tour de France title. How do you do that? Do you race races like Liège-Bastogne-Liège and then like train hard the day before, train hard the day after? Like, how is he going to be able to focus on these one-day races when we all know the ultimate goal is the Tour de France? It's just, it's a tricky one. I'm sure they got it all figured out, but
George. But you know what I mean? They've substituted a lot of races with altitude camp. So I'm pretty sure, like after the classics, and I don't know what that means for Pogačar after the classic, is that after Liège-Bastogne-Liège probably. Then it's it's all training camps. It's multi-day efforts with the team. Also a lot of race simulation. I would guess.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can. I mean, races is at one point racing is good because you have the terrain. You can, for example, Dauphiné, in my opinion, remains the best preparation for the Tour de France. But because you have the same style of roads, same style of climbs, but you're kind of depending on what the peloton decides, right?
Yeah.
So if there's a day where the peloton decides, okay, it's not going to be hard, then you're sitting there and you say, and in Pogačar's case, I'm pretty sure that they can simulate most of the efforts in races and on training camps. It is hard mentally, though. Very hard mentally.
Yeah, which should be in the past. He hasn't done that many altitude camps. Is that correct? Or I feel like
I think last year was the first time. I mean, the year before he was injured, so he was injured after the classic, so he had to miss the camps. He's an interesting guy. It's like it doesn't nothing of what we know or what we consider to be logical applies to him.
Yeah, agreed.
It is an interesting question of, like, I understand, like, too early or you got to do stage races, but if you really examine that scientifically, I'm not sure it makes sense, because stage races, you're saying, Johan, what if a day's canceled because of bad weather? We see that all the time now. What if it's a slow day? It's like, wouldn't you rather just be at altitude controlling every variable? It's like, we're going to prepare this way. I'm not going to go to the Algarve and they're going to send us the wrong way, or there's a car on the road. Like, I'm just going to do what I prepare perfectly and I can control everything, versus going to do, and I agree, the Dauphiné is different, but I mean, also the guy's a one-day racer he's moonlighting as a stage racer. Like, he's now really focusing on one days, and he's like, yeah, I'll try to defend the Tour title. We'll see if that happens. I'll probably win anyway. But he's not really a full-time stage racer anymore.
No. I mean, I think he's one of the very few Grand Tour riders who can win, classics. In my opinion, he's the only rider right now who could win all 5 monuments. Don't see anybody else capable of doing that. And that's probably one of his goals. It seems to me like these guys, except Vingegaard, who's really focusing on the Tour, doesn't seem to worry about anything else. But the other guys, they're basically worried about, okay, how can I check the boxes? Okay, this one is done. Pogačar still needs Milan-San Remo and Paris-Roubaix, I guess, and that's it.
You could get one or both of those this year.
So the other factor is, with one-day races, we all know that they are most definitely more dangerous than stage races, because everything's on the line. There's no margin for errors. Like, you have one shot, so the risk that the riders take are a lot more. And unfortunately, we've seen riders like Pogačar get into trouble with that. Liège. Hopefully that doesn't happen this year. We want to see the top favorites get to the Tour without any sort of injuries. Well, although we already saw Remco had a bad crash in training, which is unfortunate, but in terms of these other two, top guys, we want to see them get there and really go mano a mano with perfect preparation each and see what happens. It'd be fun to watch that.
Johan, also on the bike, I don't think it's going to matter, because I don't think you're going to see that bike the rest of the year. That's my hot take. I think that was, as George said, the UAE Tour was about impressing the sponsors. I don't know. It looks like, I mean, I don't want to get like deplatformed. It looked a bit like a hunk of junk.
Well, one thing is the way it looks, it
looks heavy too.
They're still in the business of winning bike races, right? So, I was surprised to see Pogačar ride that bike on the last stage, although it was
that shows you how confident he is too.
Yeah, but also, like if it's heavier, and then you see also on the mountain, like the super high wheels, like these wheels, it's like it doesn't seem to matter. It's just an optical observation I have. I'm pretty sure the bike performs well. They've done the research. They've put the resources in it to make it performing, and it just looks a bit weird because the frame is so unconventional. And it looks like, to me, it looks like he's way more forward still on the bike compared to his usual position. He's already positioned forward. On this bike, it looked like he was different. But hey, if the key points is the handlebars, the saddle, and the bottom bracket, if they are the same geometry, there's not much else to say,
Yeah, I mean, maybe you'll see it like. Sometimes Jonas or Wout will run the Aero Cervelo on some tour stages, and they go back and forth. I'm curious to see. It's funny you mentioned the wheels. UAE, it must be a theory they have. Everyone on the team always runs the same wheels and usually the same bike. They never switch anything. I wonder if they've decided just having everything be interchangeable. That adds more value than some slight of like marginal. It's funny though, because we heard about marginal gains for a decade. And they're like, nah, we're just going to run this kind of unaero bike with deep dish wheels, even on mountain stages.
Spencer, until this year, UAE, they didn't have the choice because they didn't have an aero bike. So they were forced to ride always with the normal, the one bike, the one frame they had, and then the time trial frame. But you're right, you know, like all of the mountain stages, at least last year in the Tour, the whole team was on super high profile wheels all the time. So, I mean, you know, pretty sure they're still super light.
They're like destroying the cycling industry. Is it? They're going to show people they can just have one set of wheels and one bike. George, you mentioned Josh Tarling. I was actually impressed at how good he was. He did pop on Jebel Hafid. I don't know if you noticed, Johan, but Florian Vermees, you mentioned him. He was on the front at the start of the final climb on the final day. They just had him sit 500 watts until he couldn't ride anymore. Like that's what they're starting the climb at. Yeah. And he's there for quite a while. And then, I mean, not the genius, it's just what it is, but Pogačar is sitting zone 2 and he's doing that. So you can imagine how fatigued everybody is by the time he attacks. It's really incredible to watch, but that was a great pickup. Like, well, I
think what I was impressed about, like, and I paid a bit more attention because it's two Belgians, you know, these two new guys, Florian Vermeers, we already know him. He was second in Paris-Roubaix once. But Rune Herrerots is a relatively more unknown rider. And, you know, when he was pulling, when Vermeers pulled off and Herrerots did like, I don't know, a 1.5 kilometer pull or something, I think there were like 10 or 12 riders left. And that's supposed to be a non-climber. You know, these two guys were non-climbers and everybody else was already in the red when he pulled off.
Yeah, but Johan, in a typical team situation, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you're pulling off with 8K to go, you're like, hold on a second. I needed you, but it's Pogačar we're talking about, so it made no difference. But, you know, typically you'd be like, well, I needed you for a bit more Ks than that. Get me to at least 3K to go or something like that. But, you know, with Pogačar, obviously it doesn't matter. But still very impressive that he was able to pull that hard. And like you said, only 15, 20 guys left on the wheel.
Yeah.
George, did you get a chance to watch any of, before I do want to talk about bigger picture, who could challenge Pogačar if he's this good all year. But before we do that, the sprints, I'm just going to list who won them. Stage 1, Jonathan Milan. Stage 4, Jonathan Milan. Stage 5, Tim Merlier. Stage 6, Tim Merlier. And these were, I would say, the best sprinters in the world were at this race. This is like sprint world championships. Jasper Philipsen, no win. He's kind of a different type of sprinter, but what are you guys thinking coming out of this? Are these the two best sprinters in the world?
Yeah, I mean, Milan, I read somewhere is doing over 1,800 watts in these sprints. Obviously, he's a big guy, but the amount of power this dude has is super impressive. You know, actually, I think it was like the first stage you said he won when Pogačar kind of threw it at him there, out of nowhere, which is also incredibly impressive that he's still there with 300-400 meters to go. And it was an uphill sprint as well. But Milan is a very, diverse sprinter and probably the most powerful sprinter in the peloton. A guy like Merlier is a bit more of a, can find his own way. And you saw how he can position himself and get out of tight holes that a lot of guys can't do. But right now, those two sprinters are got to be the top guys in the bunch. And it's I think Philipsen was a bit behind. He was close on one of the stages. Also seemed to be alone a lot. Wasn't getting a lot of the lead outs there in UAE, where Milan was having good lead outs from his guys. So it's going to be interesting to see these guys keep going head to head, and especially once they get to the Tour de France, which I think Milan is going to do his first tour this year, from what I read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Milan, I think there's no doubt about that. We've already said it before, Spencer. He's not just a sprinter. Let's not forget he's the world champion 4-kilometer pursuit. He's the world record holder on 4 kilometers in 3:59 on the velodrome. So, he's a lot more than a pure sprinter. Merlier, I would say he's more of a pure sprinter. I would say Milan is like the raw power. Merlier is more like the artist. He's an artist sprinter. He's, very savvy. Sometimes he gets out of situations where he has nobody around, and you say, well, I mean, with a kilometer to go, he's in 15th, 20th position, and all of a sudden he's there. I mean, that stage 6 sprint was just pure. That was like Merlier trademark. He just went when everybody was still deciding where they want to go. And before they knew, I mean, of course you have to have the power, but that was amazing. The way he won that sprint. Philipsen was thinking, okay, I'm going to go now. And he saw Merlier pass with like 5 kilometers faster. Yeah. That was an impressive sprint for Merlier. And I've already said it many times, he's an underrated, undervalued sprinter. Everybody's, he's one of the best sprinters in the world, And,
how did that happen, Johan? I don't quite get it. Mm-hmm. Did he have one bad year, like in 2022 or something?
Well, he was before he was on Alpecin, right, together with Philipsen.
Yeah.
I think he won a stage in the Giro and he won a stage in the Tour also on Alpecin. So I don't really know. He's a different personality. He's very laid back, not very prominent in the media either. I don't know if that's one of the reasons, but hey, Lefevre picked him up from Alpecin, and he's been their most winning rider by far. On top of that, European champion now also, which is quite nice for a sprinter. So I mean, I like Merlier. He's a really, really good guy.
In the winter, I do these big models to figure out like who's the best sprinter, and they're all objective. Like who's the best sprinter, who's the best GC rider, who's the best one-day rider. And Merlier was like the best sprinter when he showed up, but his biggest problem is just getting starts. Like he's only started one Grand Tour in 2 years. 32 years old, you'd say kind of a little old, but it's like he's almost the up-and-comer sprinter of 2025, it feels like, where he's coming out of, he's like a cicada coming out of hibernation or something.
If you look, I mean, I don't know the year now, but I'm going to say 2018, 2019 somewhere. He was without a team. He didn't have a team. And the Rothhoff brothers picked him up last minute as a cyclocross rider. Because I remember I went to a cyclocross race in Belgium to check as a spectator, and he was racing there in a black jersey. He had no team. He was picked up last moment, and then he won a race in the spring, and from then on it was like, but I'm going to say it's probably not. I mean, he's 32 now. 2018, 2019, it must have been. If you can check it afterwards, Spencer. But so he was a cyclocross rider before, and he was very famous for having always, no discussion, the best start. He was always the first in the first corner. That was he was a pure cyclocross rider.
It's funny you say that because in my notes here I have Milan. Stage 6 was where he maybe got exposed because his one weakness appears to be when things break down, he can't improvise quite as well. But Merlier, like that's when he's at his best. Like he can ride himself out of anything. Let's talk about our remaining sponsors, and then we'll get into Volta Algarve, which I think if UAE is the Death Star, then Visma is now the Rebel Alliance, and we'll talk about what they did while Pogačar was scaring everybody at the UAE Tour. But our next partner is AG1, and everyone knows, if you've listened to the show, Lance does not like to eat greens. I'm the same way, terrible about it, been terrible about it my whole life. But AG1 provides me with an easy way to get all the greens and nutrition I need first thing in the morning before I have coffee. I come down, have my AG1, and I feel great. I'm on a fitness journey in 2025. Johan and I are trying to outride each other. And then George is in another league, but we might be coming for you, George, this year.
George, I'm checking George. He's up there with it. He's, we need to take advantage of him being sick a little bit. And
I know.
This is when we strike. But as I get older, I've purchased a treadmill. I'm getting serious about the fitness, especially in the wintertime. It's easy to let it go. And AG1 is a great way to, if you're working on your physical fitness, that's one thing, but it also allows you to work on your diet and make sure you're taking in all the nutrients you need to keep yourself going. And this year you can try AG1 for yourself. It's the perfect time. There's no better time than late February, the most depressing time of the year. So this is the perfect time to start a new healthy habit. And AG1 is offering a free $75 gift when you sign up. You'll get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs in your first box. Those travel packs are key if you're on the road a lot, because it allows you to keep up your AG1 practice when you're in hotels. So make sure to check out drinkag1.com/themove to get this offer. That's drinkag1.com/themove to start your new 2025 on a healthier note. And that's drink AG1, like the letters AG, and then the number 1.com/themove spelled out. Our last partner, last but not least, is OneSkin. And deep, dry skin, deeper wrinkles, creepiness, skin creepiness, not personality. These are the few visible signs of aging, something today's sponsor, OneSkin, knows all about. I'm not so overly concerned with the aesthetics, but I do want to keep my skin healthier as I get older, especially when we have George setting the standard here at We Do. I was telling Johan on Friday's show, Lance was trying to guess my age at his house. He thought I was closer to 50 than I'm not even that close to 40. So that was a humbling moment for me. So I am now on the OneSkin train, and their OS1 peptide powers their topical creams. It's the first ingredient scientifically proven to reverse your skin's biological age. And OS1 is scientifically designed to decrease lines, wrinkles, boost hydration. So there's still time for me. I can reverse this process and help with thinning skin. They've got over 4,000 5-star reviews for their full line of face, body, sun, and travel size products. Make 2025 the year you invest in habits that keep you and your skin healthier at the cellular level. And they are offering the Move listeners a special deal. You can get 15% off using code THEMOVE at oneskin.co. That's .co, not .com. 15% off oneskin.co with the code THEMOVE. All right. So if the UAE is freaking us all out, we're a little worried about the rest of the year. Volta Algarve in southern Portugal, I guess, offered a glimpse of hope. I don't know how close you guys watched it. This race will mostly be remembered for the debacle on stage 1, where Ghana was robbed of a victory. Johan and I will say forever. But on stage 4, the one thing to say about stage 4, Cofidis won the stage, which is important because they're in, like, the secret battle of the year is the points battle between Astana and Cofidis, and Astana's been racking them up. So that was interesting. And then it finished on a time trial. Really interesting TT, 19.6K long, the last, mainly rolling to flat until 17K to go. And then it was 9% for the last bit. It looked like Wout van Aert was going to win the stage. I thought he had it. And then Jonas Vingegaard starts and, really comes out strong, wins the stage, wins the overall. I think he had a 16-second deficit to João Almeida and a 20-second deficit to Almeida's UAE teammate Jan Christian before the start of the stage, because he got dropped, I guess, distanced on stage 2, when Almeida gifted the win to Christian, which I think he shouldn't have done based on what we know now. But the overall GC was Vingegaard wins the overall. Almeida's second at 30 seconds back. Lawrence wait, that can't be right. Depluce third at 24 seconds back. Let me check this. I've written down.
That's true. That's correct.
No. I think that's the stage, because he's 15 seconds back in the GC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plus was third in the GC.
Yeah, 24. Yeah, Plus is third. And Primoz, though, if you might be thinking, what? I thought Primoz Roglic was at this race. He finishes a disappointing... Can't even find him.
I think he was 8th overall.
Yeah, 53 seconds back. Kind of not a great time trial. Didn't look at his best out there. But Johan, we were debating before this episode. You're like, oh, you're gonna be slamming Almeida. I mean, I think you said there's nothing he could do. There's nothing he could have done in the TT. He had a great climb. Like on the final climb, he did it in 7:07. The second fastest, interestingly, was Roglic at 7:18. Jonas was 7:20, Wout 7:48, just to give you an idea about how those guys finished on the stage. And Wout did a bike change too, and none of the other guys did. But Almeida,
bike change too.
He did. And Almeida gifted the first stage to his teammate, giving up, I guess, a 4-second time bonus, loses the GC by 15 seconds.
Yeah, well,
to me, that just highlights, like, that cannot happen in a well-run team. Like, that's so baffling to me.
Yeah, I think, but that's the decision. That's the decision that Almeida made. I mean, it's not the team's decision, and I think Almeida has shown that he's he's a team player. He was the leader for this stage race for the team. The fact that he came up so fast and then said last minute, because these are personal decisions. Like in a split second, you have to decide, okay, I'm going to let this guy the win. You don't know what's going to happen afterwards. At the end of the day, is it going to change something for Almeida if he wins a stage in Algarve or not? He was by far the most popular rider of the race. But yeah, I mean, I applaud Almeida for doing this, because this is going to come back to him at some point. A guy like Kristen, young rider, super talented. He's not going to forget this, especially now that Almeida didn't win the GC. He's going to say, hey, this guy let me win the stage, or at least, didn't pass me. I still owe him something. It's going to come back.
I'm on the same page as Johan. Like, in fact, like, I see it as like a strong team dynamic that he's coming up so fast. His teammate has been in the breakaway, kind of done all the the leg work to get in the breakaway, is about to. Like, to me, it would have been a bad look if he biked through his teammate and won the stage.
It definitely would have been a bad look. Yeah,
I feel like that would have been a much worse of a look. And like Johan said, like, this is going to come back to him. I mean, it's a huge deal that he let him win the stage. And a guy like Christensen will put it all on the line when Almeida really needs it later on in the season. So I think that was fine. And it really was, uneventful in terms of his overall finish at the final stage. So I think it was a good call by him, and I think it made the team look even stronger to me.
Do you guys feel like sometimes they have a hard time picking a leader? Like even at the Tour last year, where Ayuso felt like he was doing his own thing.
Well, that was a personal decision. It was clear who was the leader. Just Ayuso didn't agree that. I mean, I don't think he was disputing the fact that Pogačar was the leader, but he was kind of saying, okay, I also want to go my own. So he didn't want to pull on the Galibier, or at least not until Almeida called him. That looked really bad. But I mean, I think there probably it's a bit of a lack of, firm instructions from the car, because, if you get to the Galibier on that particular stage, and I think it was Adam Yates who first pulled, because Ayuso was hanging in the back, and I think that's more of a Machin issue. If he was in the car, I think he was in the car, saying, "Hey, Ayuso, just go to the front and do your work." It's not like, okay, try to hang in there. That's because it was clear that he was able to do it, because I think he was fourth or fifth on the top of the Galibier. But overall, I mean, listen, they have a super strong team. That was exceptional in the Tour de France, because usually the things I see that are strange in terms of team dynamics are in the races where Pogačar is not present. Whenever he's present, it's very clear what the tactics are.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. If you're not clear what the tactics are when Pogačar is there, you might need to have a visit to like a reality. You might have to have a reality check, because that guy's pretty good. If you think you're the leader, I have news for you. You're not. What do you guys think? What was the deal with the bike change? Did Wout change the bike to give data back to Vingegaard on if he should do a bike change? It's a pretty steep climb, but I mean, Jonas didn't seem that bothered by having the TT bike on it.
Well, everybody feels different on their TT bikes, and some guys are more confident climbing on their TT bikes than others. I think Wout probably felt like he was going to climb a lot faster on his road bike, where we've seen Vingegaard win, a stage in the time trial in a very dominant fashion, keeping his TT bike. I think he's really comfortable climbing on his TT bike. And like he said, he even though he would have saved some weight, he didn't think he can make up the difference by stopping and losing 15 to 20 seconds. I think that was the call. It was interesting that Wout was the only guy that actually changed, but it was a great time trial by both of them.
Yeah, Wout, I mean, I don't know if it was, listen, Wout was definitely going for the win in the time trial. Bike change, it's hard to do it without losing 20 seconds. To make up 20 seconds later on, that's a big ask. that's a big ask because you've been in that super aggressive time trial position for such a long time. On the other hand, he went super fast on the flat, faster than anybody else, and then lost. You have to calculate 20 seconds for the back change.
And he lost 28 to Jonas
on the climb.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably 20 of that's the bike change.
Probably.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, we were pulling hard for him, and then we got the world's biggest Wout van Aert fan in the house, and so this was a crushing defeat for us. Confused why his teammate beat him, but Jonas pretty good, like cruises through the flat section of that time trial. I was really impressed. Wins did just enough. It's like the Kansas City Chiefs. You're like, no way he wins this, and then he pulls it out at the end, wins the GC, reminds everyone why he's Jonas, and they're not. Clearly not on the same level as Pogačar. He does this in a more normal. This is like normally what you would want to see from a GC contender this time of year. Like pretty good, not at his best. Here's a concern I have though. So Wout van Aert also very good. Johan, were you surprised he was that good in the TT? Like he must be flying to.
For some reason the sprints didn't work out for him. The uphill finish.
He kind of got his wheel chopped. Did you see that? Like he had a break.
So I'm gonna reference your point there because Bob and Julik said the same thing to me. Like a good Wout van Aert is not getting his wheel chopped. He's anticipating any sort of movement like that. He's going before he's going to get boxed in. Like
that's bullshit.
He wasn't at his. Are you saying I'm bullshit, or are you saying
that's Bobby's comment is bullshit?
That's my comment. I'm saying a good Wout van Aert is going to be anticipating any kind of wheel chop or any kind of boxing, and he's just going to go. So I feel maybe he wasn't at his best in the sprints, but that time trial was incredible. In fact, super impressive with an uphill finish like that. So, maybe his aerobic power is much better than his actual sprinting power at the moment, but he's clearly in good shape.
But George,
I've said it, Spencer. You said worried for Van Aert. I'm not worried for Van Aert. He's going to be classics. He's going to be.
I felt a little silly after this. I was thinking about that comment, Johan. But George, just to run with this, do you he was so out of position? So I was going to say, Jonas, wow, they look great. Yeah. The rest of the team, where are they? Like Wout van Aert was so out of position going into that sprint. Like it just feels like they're increasingly relying on. It's like think about last year at the Tour. It's like, hey, Jonas, we know you're in the hospital for 3 weeks, but can you make something happen here for us? Like they're just going back to Jonas and Wout. And I don't know if you guys follow soccer or football, but it kind of reminds me of Man City, where it was this unbelievable team. Everyone clicks over into their 30s, and then it's just not quite able to keep up. I mean, maybe this is wrong, but I'm a little worried about the supporting cast. Like they just were not there to support either of those guys throughout the whole race. Well, okay, but I have another fact or another stat for you, Johan, because I knew you were going to say that. And this is what concerns me about. And Visma could show up to the Tour like their top 7, like they could be fantastic. But one thing I'm concerned about. UAE was unbelievable this week, all over the place, flooding the zone. Deep teams at 3 stage races, wins 2 of the 3, could have won 3 of the 3. Here's something crazy. So with riders under the age of 23, this is not 23 and under. This is under the age of 23. Both teams have worked very hard to recruit them. Visma signed some big names. UAE signed some big names. UAE has 21 pro wins on amongst riders 22 and younger. Visma has 3.
22 pro wins over the last few years, or
since they turned pro. So if you're 22, they're probably 3 years pro max. Visma has 3. They have 3 wins amongst their riders 22 and under. So I just worry that UAE is replenishing the water. Like they're stocking the pond so fast. Are they just going to overwhelm this older team?
I don't know. I mean, I feel there's something to that. I feel like perhaps Visma is going to really just focus on going all in on their main objectives, the one-day classics and the Tour de France, where UAE has a bit more depth and they can really focus on like what we saw last week, all 3 stage races. They almost won them all. So definitely UAE has got more depth, but I think when it comes down to it, they're going to be pretty equal in terms of firepower amongst the teams at Visma's main objectives, in my opinion.
I think so too. I agree, George.
I kind of agree with you guys too, but that's not fun if I say that. Like, let's say Isaac Del Toro or Juan Ayuso continues to get better, just like hypothetically. Is Sepp Kuss a match for him at this year's tour? Or these just fill in a young UAE rider? Like, will they essentially just become better versions of the Visma domestiques?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think neither Ayuso or Del Toro will be at the Tour de France this year. I don't think so.
That's what they say now.
And I mean, let's not forget a good Sepp Kuss, Matteo Jorgensen, and a Simon Yates. And that's a hard combo to be better than. So if those guys show up at the Tour de France in top fitness, certainly I would say that'd be at least a match for whatever UAE brings them, or perhaps even a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Matteo, you mentioned Matteo, George. He's the big X factor, I think. Like, he's turned into a legitimate star and could fix a lot of these problems when he's present.
Well, we're trying to, draw conclusions now when, for example, we just said, the three guys, Simon Yates, Matteo Jorgensen, and Sepp Kuss, they haven't even started racing yet.
Correct.
That's not true. Sepp Kuss has started racing. He's been at all these races.
Yeah, Sepp Kuss was in Valencia, no? Was he not in Valencia?
He was at Algarve, and he was at...
Was he in Algarve? Okay, I didn't...
Yeah, you're proving my point. And he was at Classica Jaén.
Okay.
He's not, yeah.
My bad.
I mean, George, when's the last time we've seen a good Sepp Kuss?
Oh no, he had a harder year last year, but he's still Sepp Kuss, winner of the Tour of Spain, and I'm just I wouldn't be surprised to see him get back to his level or even better. Let's just give it time. It was still very early season, and these races in a few months won't matter at all. So
I think Sepp Kuss to be at his best needs to have a leader at his best. That's when he shows what he's able to do. When Jonas is going to be top, Sepp Kuss is going to be there. He doesn't fail.
No. But he can also look lost in the woods for 6 months, and then he's one of these. You don't see them as much anymore. They can just. It's like Geraint Thomas. You're like, man, this guy is off the pace, and then he just shows up to his target race and is great. So it could be fine. It's something I've noticed in other sports too. It's a little uncomfortable for us all to talk about because we're not in our 20s. I am getting a little worried if is the modern sport landscape just, and you see it in the NBA too, like these 20-year-old, you're like, what the heck is going on? Like, how is Oklahoma City dominating the NBA and they have a bunch of 22 to 25-year-olds, and it's because they can just move a lot faster and they're a lot physically more adept than these older riders. Older athletes. So I'm just getting a little concerned about it happening in cycling. I'm not a fan of it. I don't want anything. I want Visma to fall apart. I'm just worried about when you look at the ages of those two teams.
Let's move to the third stage race real quick, Spencer. Ruta del Sol, Volta Andalusia. There's not much else to say since we last spoke, other than Sivakov sealed the deal. Didn't really get in problems anymore. Two wins from breakaways, right?
Yeah. Is that weird in a 5-day race to have the last 2 days be breakaway days?
I mean, kind of. But I think it's also, there was really only one team with a real sprinter, which was Christoph. He won the sprint, and then they had riders in the breakaway, so they didn't chase. And it was safe for UAE. I'm really happy that Sivakov won. I mean, he's one of those guys, man. He deserves a win because he's so strong, and he's like the super domestique, always there, always sacrificing himself. But he's so strong. He could be a leader on any team.
Well, I guess technically he's a leader at this race for UAE. I mean, I was impressed too, and he won because Van Heels and Pidcock were the main competition. And they're punchy, really explosive riders. And he just was like, I'm going to go on the attack before they go on the attack. And they were riding up to him, as opposed to attacking him. Which is Yeah, like very smart rider and strong rider. Yeah, his raw strength, like you, Johan, really impressed me this week. Like that's a serious ride, and I mean that's another piece. I guess that's a big piece of the UAE puzzle as we get deeper into the year. Was it 2 Basque wins to finish this? It was Diego Urate.
Yeah, both Basque. Both Basque. I mean, the last guy, Barrenechea, is no doubt, and Uriarte is as Basque as a name you can think of also. 2 nice wins, especially once again, Kern Pharma. You know, they're here to stay. You know, these guys, they really showed their quality last year in the Vuelta with 3 stage wins, but they're doing really well. And by the way, their star rider from last year, Pablo Castrillo, now on Movistar, is proving to be amazingly strong. I mean, it's not like last year he was on amazing shape. He was super strong already in the Valencia races, and now in Tour of UAE. He crashed, but he did an amazing job.
Yeah, he was really good. Equipo Confarma won stage 4, Movistar won stage 5. Happy to see both of these teams win. I'm happy to see Equipo Confarma doing well after the Vuelta. That would have been kind of disappointing if they just disappeared. But yeah, as you say, here to stay. Movistar. We can't give shout outs to every team that's impressing us, but Movistar, wow. Like they pick up Pablo. He's doing great, but that's not it. Like they have like Ivan Romeo. Yeah. And then Javier Romo. They're just it feels to me like they're finally leaving. As great as Valverde was and as great as he was for that team, they're like leaving that era and entering this exciting new youth-driven team. Like it feels like a brand new team a little bit.
Yeah. Ivan Romeo is only 20 years old, world champion under 23 in the time trial, but really, really strong rider. I mean, he was almost on the podium, right, in UAE. I think he finished 4th. But that's a big talent.
Yeah, and like you said, Spencer, the depth. I mean, they've been riding well since down under. So it seems to be a completely different Movistar team this year, and led by young riders. So it's going to be exciting to see their progress this year.
They were 4th and 7th at UAE with Romeo and then Castrillo. What's funny is Einar Rubio. If you notice, he got a flat on stage 3 on Joel Jais. His bike was in the middle. It was just like consumer bike rack, so they didn't have a wheel on it. They had to take his bike off, and you're like, why wasn't his bike on the outside? But it's like the guy was probably the 3rd option at that race. Like that's how deep the team was.
Yeah, and they started the season really well. So I actually spoke to Eusebio Nzue last week for quite a bit on the phone, and he confirmed. I think he's probably. If he's not 70, he must be close or in his 70s already. He's been over 45 years in pro cycling. And he said that, he's still there, but it's really out of his hands. It's changed completely. But nice to see that he's still there running the team, and the team is super competitive. They actually, I think they re-signed their sponsorship until 2029 with Movistar.
Jeez. Crazy. Yeah. Do you guys have anything to add before we take off?
I think we've covered it all, no, George?
Yep, covered it all.
Here's a fact just to leave you with before you leave. So this was the biggest margin of victory at UAE Tour. The second was 2020. Adam Yates won by 1 minute and 1 second over an unknown young rider named Tadej Pogačar. Like that just shows you how fast things can change. I mean, in the later that year, he would go on to win the Tour de France, but it's just like keep an eye out for these little trends that you're like, I don't know, Pogačar, he's going to be good in 10 years. And then the guy is taking over the sport. So things can change when you least expect it.
For sure. Okay. Thanks, Spencer.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right, bye, guys.
Ciao.